HOA Karen have been showing up at my farm every day for the past 3 months, threatening me to sell my land or face consequences. They want to build some fancy shopping center where my cornfields stand. They don't care that my family has farmed this soil for over 50 years. All they see is land they can develop and money they can make. Mr. Jenkins, your time is running out, Karen Davidson, the HOA president, told me yesterday morning. She stood on my worn porch with 2 men in dark suits flanking her like bodyguards. The board has unanimously voted to acquire this property for our Sunshine Valley expansion project. You're simply delaying the inevitable. The threat started small but kept getting bigger. First, it was letters about made-up violations. Then came notices about water usage penalties. Now they're talking about using legal tricks to force me off my own land at a price that wouldn't even cover what I owe on my tractor. We're prepared to offer you $75,000 for the entire property, which is more than fair considering the condition of this place, Karen said while looking disgustedly at my barn. If you refuse, we have connections with county officials who can make your life very difficult. What these HOA bullies don't realize is that they picked the wrong farmer to intimidate. I might be just a simple man with calloused hands who grows corn and raises a few chickens, but my son Michael isn't. And he doesn't take kindly to people threatening his father. I didn't tell them about Michael. Didn't see the point. They were so busy looking down their noses at my muddy boots and weathered face that they never bothered to ask about my family. If they had done their homework instead of assuming I was just some helpless old man, maybe they would have made different choices. Maybe they would have left me alone. But they didn't. And now they're about to learn a hard lesson about judging a book by its cover. The real trouble started last week when Karen showed up with what she called her final offer. She had 5 people with her this time, including a man she introduced as their attorney and another she said was from the county zoning office. Mr. Jenkins, we've been patient with you, Karen said, her fake smile nowhere to be seen. But our investors are ready to break ground on this project. The Sunshine Valley Shopping Plaza will bring jobs and economic growth to this area. One stubborn farmer won't stand in the way of progress. The man she called the attorney stepped forward. We've documented numerous violations on your property that give the county grounds to condemn this land. Outdated electrical systems, improper waste management, unpermitted structures. He waved a folder full of papers at me. We can make this easy or difficult. Your choice. I looked at my farm, at the fields my father and his father before him had tended. The barn needed some work, sure, but condemn the whole place? That was a lie and we all knew it. This is my home, I said simply. Not for sale. Karen's face turned hard. Then we'll do this the difficult way. You have 3 days to reconsider before we file the paperwork. She pointed at my cornfield. By next month, bulldozers will be clearing that eyesore whether you've accepted our offer or not. After they left, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the sun set over my cornfields. In the distance, I could see the new houses the HOA had built last year, all identical with their perfect lawns and 2-car garages. They had been pushing closer to my land for years, but I never thought they'd go this far. I'm not a man who asks for help easily. Never have been. But that night I called my son. Dad? Everything okay? Michael answered, concern in his voice because I rarely call after dinner. Got some people causing trouble, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That HOA from the new development. They're threatening to take the farm. There was silence for a moment. What kind of threats? I told him everything, the violations they made up, the pressure, the 3-day deadline, the bulldozers they promised would come. Don't sign anything, Michael said firmly. Don't agree to anything. I'll be there tomorrow morning to sort this out. They say they have people at the county on their side, I warned him. Michael's laugh was short and without humor. Let me worry about that. Just sit tight, Dad. I slept poorly that night, memories of my wife Sarah mixing with worries about losing her home. She died 5 years back, and the thought of strangers tearing down the house where she'd raised our son and tended her garden was more than I could bear. Morning came with dark clouds threatening rain. I was in the barn checking on a sick calf when I heard vehicles coming up the driveway. More than one by the sound of it. When I stepped outside, my heart sank. 3 black SUVs and a bulldozer were parked in front of my house. Karen and her group had returned and they weren't waiting 3 days. Mr. Jenkins, Karen called out, I hope you've reconsidered our generous offer. I wiped my hands on my overalls and walked slowly toward them. Thought I had 3 days to decide. The man who claimed to be from the county zoning office stepped forward. Plans have changed. We have authorization to begin assessment for demolition today. He held up some official-looking paper. Signed by Judge Williams this morning. My mouth went dry. Judge Williams? You're lying. He was friends with my father. Karen smiled coldly. Friendship doesn't stand in the way of progress and legal obligations, Mr. Jenkins. Now, if you'll sign these papers, we can make this transition smooth. The money will be deposited in your account today, and you'll have 48 hours to vacate the property. The bulldozer's engine started up with a roar that seemed to shake the ground. The operator didn't look me in the eye when I glanced his way. I'm not signing anything, I said. And you have no right to bring that machine onto my property. Karen sighed dramatically. This is what happens when people refuse to be reasonable. Robert, show him the court order. The attorney pulled out more papers, but before he could hand them to me, the sound of another vehicle approaching made everyone turn. A county sheriff's department SUV came up my driveway fast, lights flashing but no siren. Relief flooded through me. Michael had come. The sheriff's vehicle skidded to a stop between me and the HOA group. The door opened and my son stepped out, all 6 feet 2 inches of him in his sheriff's uniform, badge gleaming on his chest, face set in what his mother used to call his no-nonsense expression. Karen looked annoyed at the interruption. Can we help you, officer? Michael walked over to stand beside me. Sheriff Michael Jenkins, County Sheriff's Department. What's going on here? I saw the moment it hit Karen, the realization washing over her face as she looked between me and my son. Her confident smile faltered. Sheriff Jenkins, she repeated. Michael nodded once. You want to tell me why there's a bulldozer on my father's property and why you're presenting documents claiming to be from Judge Williams? The attorney tried to recover. We have all the proper authorizations, Sheriff. This is a civil matter regarding code violations and a property sale. Michael's expression didn't change, but I knew my son. He was furious beneath that professional calm. I'd like to see those authorizations. Reluctantly, the attorney handed over the documents. Michael looked through them carefully, his face growing darker with each page. Mr. Thompson, is it? Michael asked the attorney, who nodded. Are you aware that forgery of a judge's signature is a felony in this state? Because Judge Williams is currently in the hospital recovering from surgery. Has been for 3 days. He couldn't have signed this morning. The blood drained from the attorney's face. The man claiming to be from the county zoning office began edging toward one of the SUVs. Sir, Michael called to him sharply. Don't take another step. Everyone stays right where they are until we sort this out. He reached for his radio. This is Sheriff Jenkins. I need 2 units at the Jenkins farm on County Road 8. And please contact the DA's office. Possible forgery and fraud situation. Karen tried to take control again. There must be some misunderstanding. Our paperwork came directly from the county office. We'll see about that, Michael replied. Because I was at the county office yesterday, and there were no condemnation proceedings filed against this property. He turned to the bulldozer operator. Sir, do you have permits to operate that machinery here? The operator killed the engine. Lady just hired me this morning. Said all the paperwork was in order. Karen's composure was cracking. Sheriff, surely we can resolve this without making it a legal matter. The Sunshine Valley HOA simply wants to improve the community. By threatening my father and forging documents? Michael asked quietly. That's not community improvement, Ms. Davidson. Karen Davidson. She lifted her chin defiantly. Ms. Davidson, I'm going to need statements from everyone here. My deputies will be arriving shortly to assist. Michael turned to me. Dad, you okay? I nodded, feeling steadier than I had in months. I'm fine now. Within minutes, 2 more sheriff's vehicles pulled up. The deputies took control of the scene, separating Karen and her group for questioning. Michael moved the bulldozer operator to the side, taking his statement first since he seemed like an unwitting participant in the scheme. I sat on my porch steps watching it all unfold. My neighbor Bill drove up, curious about all the commotion. Frank, what in the world is happening? He asked, coming to sit beside me. HOA tried to run me off my land, I explained. Turns out they picked the wrong farmer to mess with. Bill whistled low. They didn't know Michael is your son? Guess they didn't bother to check. We sat in silence for a minute, watching as one of the deputies handcuffed the attorney after finding more suspicious documents in his briefcase. They've been pushing the Barnes family to sell too, Bill said eventually. Sending letters about violations, making threats about water rights. Michael overheard us and came over. Mr. Davis, have the Barnes received any documents claiming to be from the county or a judge? Bill nodded. Got some last week. Mary was crying about it when I stopped by. They're in their 70s, Michael. Don't know how to fight something like this. Michael's jaw tightened. I'll need to speak with them. Sounds like this goes beyond Dad's farm. As the morning progressed, more neighbors arrived, drawn by the sheriff's vehicles and the drama unfolding. One by one they came forward with similar stories. The Sunshine Valley HOA had been systematically targeting rural properties throughout the area, using intimidation and what now appeared to be fraudulent documents to force sales. Karen, the attorney named Thompson, and the fake county official were taken to the sheriff's department for further questioning. The other HOA board members, looking considerably less confident than when they arrived, were released after giving statements but told not to leave town. By afternoon, the district attorney had arrived personally to assess the situation. She and Michael spoke in low voices near his vehicle while I made coffee for the deputies who remained. "Dad," Michael called me over after a while. "Miss Patel has some questions for you." The district attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, shook my hand. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm very interested in the documents they presented to you. We may be looking at a multi-county fraud operation targeting rural landowners." I told her everything I could remember about the HOA's visits, the escalating threats, the papers they brought. While we talked, Michael received a call that made his expression grow even more serious. When he hung up, he turned to Miss Patel. "That was Judge Williams's clerk. She says someone accessed the judge's office computer system remotely 3 days ago. They found template orders with his signature that could have been copied." Miss Patel nodded grimly. "This just became a cybercrime investigation too." She looked at me kindly. "Mr. Jenkins, your farm may have helped us uncover something much bigger than we initially thought." As evening approached, the various officials finally left, promising to return tomorrow to continue the investigation. Michael stayed behind, pulling a kitchen chair onto the porch beside me as the sun began to set over the cornfields. "You should have called me sooner, Dad," he said, breaking our comfortable silence. I shrugged. "Thought I could handle it." "They were breaking the law. This isn't about you being tough or independent." "Never needed help before," I said simply. Michael sighed. "That's not true. You just never asked for it." He looked out at the farm, his expression softening. "Mom would have made you call me the first day they showed up." That made me smile. "You're right about that." We sat quietly for a while longer. Eventually Michael said, "I'm staying here tonight. We'll need to go to the station tomorrow for your formal statement." "They coming back with bulldozers?" I asked. Michael shook his head. "Not unless they want to add trespassing and violating a protection order to their charges. Miss Patel is filing for an emergency injunction tonight." That night I slept soundly for the first time in months. Having Michael in the house brought back memories of when he was young, before he left for college and then the police academy. I could almost hear Sarah moving around the kitchen, humming as she made breakfast like she used to do. Morning came bright and clear. Michael and I were eating eggs and toast when his phone rang. "Sheriff Jenkins," he answered, then listened for a long moment. "I see. Yes, we'll be there soon. Thank you for the update." He put the phone down and looked at me. "That was the station. Ms. Davidson and Mr. Thompson are talking. Seems they're eager to make deals." "What kind of deals?" "The kind where they provide evidence against bigger fish to reduce their own charges." Michael sipped his coffee. "Turns out the Sunshine Valley HOA is just a front. There's a development company called Sunbelt Properties that's been running this same scheme in 3 counties. They find rural areas where they want to build, create these fake HOAs to pressure landowners, and use forged documents to force sales when necessary." "All for shopping centers?" I asked. Michael shook his head. "Bigger than that. Luxury housing developments, industrial parks, even a private airport in Johnston County. The land they get through intimidation costs them pennies on the dollar compared to fair market value." After breakfast, we drove to the sheriff's department in town. The place was buzzing with activity. Officers from neighboring counties had arrived to coordinate the expanding investigation. State investigators were setting up in the conference room. Miss Patel met us at the door. "Mr. Jenkins, thank you for coming in. We've had some significant developments overnight." She led us to an office where she had files spread across the desk. Karen Davidson broke first. Gave us everything, names, dates, properties they've already acquired through these methods. The scheme goes back at least 3 years. "How many other farmers lost their land?" I asked, thinking of neighbors who had sold and moved away over the past few years. "In this county? At least 7 properties." Miss Patel pushed a map toward me. "All within this radius of your farm." I recognized the pattern immediately. "That's all the land surrounding Benson Creek." I looked up at Michael. "The water rights." He nodded. Whoever controls that much land around the creek controls the water for the entire eastern part of the county. Exactly, Miss Patel confirmed. Mr. Thompson admitted their next phase was to create a private water company once they acquired enough surrounding properties. They'd control the resources for any future development in the area. The implications were staggering. If their plan had succeeded, they wouldn't just own the land, they'd control who got to build, farm, or live in a significant portion of the county. Throughout the day, I gave statements, identified documents, and answered endless questions from various officials. By late afternoon, I was exhausted but satisfied knowing that the truth was coming out. As Michael drove me home, he said, "The State Attorney General's office is getting involved. They're talking about creating a task force specifically to address predatory land acquisition practices." "Will people get their farms back?" I asked. "The ones who already lost them to these crooks?" Michael sighed. "It's complicated. Some properties have already been developed. But Ms. Patel thinks there's a good case for financial restitution at the very least." When we pulled up to my farm, there was a small group of people waiting by the gate. I recognized most of them, neighbors, some who still farmed, others who had sold to the HOA in recent years. Mrs. Barnes, in her 70s and leaning on a cane, approached as I got out of the car. "Frank," she said, her voice wavering, "we heard what happened. How you and Michael stood up to them." Her husband added, "If we'd all done the same, maybe they wouldn't have gotten as far as they did." "You didn't know," I said. "None of us did." Another former neighbor, Tim Rogers, stepped forward. "They told me the county was going to condemn my place because of structural issues with the barn. Showed me papers and everything. I believed them." Michael addressed the group. "The investigation is ongoing, but the district attorney's office will want statements from everyone affected. There will likely be a class action lawsuit as well." What started as an informal gathering turned into an impromptu community meeting on my porch. People shared their stories about the HOA's tactics, the threats, the forged documents, the pressure. Michael took notes, occasionally making calls to pass information to the investigators. By sunset, we had formed the Farm Protection Alliance, with my kitchen designated as temporary headquarters. Neighbors volunteered legal contacts, promised to spread the word to other communities, and vowed to fight for restitution for those who had lost their land. As people began to leave, promising to return tomorrow to continue planning, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: purpose beyond my daily farm work. Sarah would have been proud to see our home becoming a center for community action. That night, Michael stayed again, calling in another deputy to cover his morning shift. We sat on the porch after dinner, watching fireflies appear over the cornfields. "You know," he said after a while, "when I was a kid I couldn't wait to leave this farm. Thought there was nothing important happening here." I nodded, remembering his restlessness as a teenager. "And now?" "Now I understand what Mom always said about this place being worth fighting for." He looked at me. "It's not just land. It's a way of life that matters." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The investigation expanded rapidly as more victims came forward. Karen Davidson, facing multiple felony charges, provided evidence against executives at Sunbelt Properties. The attorney, Thompson, revealed connections to corrupt officials in the county office who had helped with the scheme. The bulldozer that had threatened my farm never returned. Instead, my driveway saw a steady stream of investigators, journalists, and neighbors coming for the twice-weekly Farm Protection Alliance meetings. 1 month after that confrontation in my driveway, Michael arrived with news that made those difficult months of threats worth enduring. "The state legislature has fast-tracked a new bill," he told the gathered Alliance members in my living room. "The Rural Heritage Protection Act. It specifically addresses predatory acquisition tactics and creates a registry of protected family farms that can't be rezoned without extensive public review." Mrs. Barnes, who had become the Alliance's most vocal member despite her age, asked, "And what about those who already lost their land?" "The Attorney General has established a victims fund. Sunbelt Properties' assets have been frozen, and they'll likely be forced to pay restitution." Michael smiled slightly. "The fund is being named after Dad." All eyes turned to me and I felt my face grow warm with embarrassment. "No need for that." "Too late," Michael said. "The Jenkins Fund for Rural Justice is already on the paperwork." Laughter and applause filled my old farmhouse. The same living room where I had sat alone for months, worried and threatened, was now alive with community and purpose. Later, after everyone had gone home, Michael helped me close up the barn for the night. As we walked back to the house under a sky full of stars, he said, "A reporter asked me today why the HOA picked your farm to threaten. What did you tell him? I said they thought they were choosing the easiest target, an aging farmer living alone. Michael put his hand on my shoulder. Instead, they accidentally picked the one person who could bring down their entire operation. I thought about that as we reached the porch. It wasn't just because of Michael's position as sheriff that we'd succeeded. It was because when pushed too far I'd finally asked for help. Because neighbors had come together to share information and support each other. Because sometimes the person who seems most vulnerable is actually the one who can make the biggest difference. The next morning I stood at the edge of my cornfield as the sun rose. My land. Still mine. And now protected not just by my son's badge, but by a community that had found its voice and a legal system that was finally paying attention to the plight of rural landowners. In the distance, I could see the half-built structures of what was supposed to be the beginning of the Sunshine Valley Shopping Plaza. Construction had been halted by court order. The sign at the entrance had been taken down. The HOA that had threatened me every day for months was now dissolved, its leaders facing charges, its plans in ruins. All because they didn't bother to learn about the farmer they were trying to push around. All because they didn't know that the poor old man in worn overalls had a son who wore a sheriff's badge and a community ready to stand behind him. They picked the wrong farmer to threaten. And now, not just my farm but farms across the state would be safer because of it. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, even from a simple farmer who just wanted to be left alone to tend his corn.